in the back of your mind, your dreams should be real, right?
Thanks all for tuning in to Dreamcatchers, where we make things happen. Dreamcatchers was formally launched to unlock the hidden potential in successful, self-motivated individuals who desire to take their life's work to the next level but need support to evolve. We are a collective group of professionals with various backgrounds that use our talents to assist those individuals in realizing their wildest dreams by providing education, inspiration, and direction. This podcast is where we share the lessons we've learned along the way to catching our dreams and give you some context around the how and the why to each approach to put you further ahead on the journey to catching your dream. Are you ready?
Welcome back to Weiss Advice. I'm your host, Yona Weiss. It is a pleasure to be here with my friend, Jerome Myers. How you doing, Jerome?
Amazing. How are you, Yona?
I am doing wonderfully today. I mean, you're the type of guy who I say to myself, if I'm going to have a podcast, this is the guy I want to have as my guest. You know, if it's not the first guest, definitely in the first, couple of weeks of launching it, because you just bring so much to the table in so many different ways. And we've known each other, probably online, right, for like a couple of years already. But I think something that stands out about you more than, almost anyone is just this subtlety. It's like I don't know, a nice way, a good way of putting it, an analogy. But you have just this subtlety that nobody would expect. Not that they shouldn't expect, but you just come across as so simple sometimes and so just like laid back and relaxed. And you have so much knowledge, so much experience, so much to offer that, if you want to get to know Jerome, just dig a little deeper and you'll find the well springs.
Yeah, man. I want to catch people off guard.
Exactly.
Where I come from, you play country dumb and let people see if they where their heart is. Are they going to try to take advantage of you, or are they going to be true and honest and transparent? Because that's what I value. I never want anybody to know what I own or how much I'm worth or any of that stuff, so that when we begin having conversations, you figure out what bucket you go in. And I was taught to treat the janitor the same way you treat the CEO.
Absolutely.
And I've had mentors along the way that have really confirmed that and been amazing people. And I want to continue to embody that for sure.
Beautiful. And that's really, what you do embody that and you kind of resemble that. And just a little about Jerome. If you don't know who we're talking about, Jerome Myers, he is, okay, you can find him on LinkedIn, first of all. That's where we first connected. But he has a company called Myers Methods, okay? And so you do a lot of different things. We're not going to talk about everything that you do. He's a life coach. He's a podcaster. He has three podcasts, two of which I've been a guest on. The third one, I don't even know if it's relevant, so we're going to save that. He's got a coaching program where he's really helping to bring people to the next level. He's a multifamily investor. He doesn't want to know how much he actually owns. He doesn't want you to know that, so you're going to have to guess. But his goal is to build, $1,000 portfolio and help over 100 people, along the way in finding their first deal. So he teaches, and he's just a genuine guy. I remember one time I was looking at a deal and he's like, yeah, you want me to look at it? I just sent it over and just, looked at all the details, did a quick underwriting, gave me back a bunch of feedback that I took to heart. And just very grateful for that. So without further ado, what I want to do here, he's got a great podcast called Dreamcatchers. And what's the premise of that podcast, Dreamcatchers?
We tell the stories of people who exited the matrix. And so whatever your matrix is, whatever your box is, we want to give you the tools and techniques that other people have used in order to get out of it.
That's awesome. So matrix. I left the matrix. Yeah, I took the red pill, apparently, right? And, we're still, and the truth of the matter is we have matrix upon matrix upon matrix, because every level that we enter into, it's a whole new matrix in a way, because we create certain comfortable environments for ourselves. And sometimes we have to break out of that to the next level and into something beyond where we even imagine could exist. And that only comes through education. It comes through being uncomfortable. not being complacent with where you're at in life. So I love that you tell us stories. And have you ever done a Dreamcatchers episode of you?
Early on, right? You gotta be the guinea pig on your own thing.
Right.
But he's on, and he interviewed me, but that was really early. A lot has changed in my life since I did that one, so this is good.
So we might actually do a little bit of a role shifting over here, a role reversing, and do a little Dreamcatchers, seeing what your latest matrices have been that you've left. And I'd love to do that right here, right now. So without further ado, but before we do that, okay, you have another podcast, what you just started recently, called Multifamily Missteps, okay? And this is a great podcast because it's not just like another podcast about learning multifamily. There's so many out there, and a lot of them are really great. But here what you do is you're focused on talking about the problems specifically and the challenges that, and actually the mistakes that people have made. And so you're interviewing people. And so that's really great. But what I want to ask you there, have you done a role reversal on that?
Just the first episode, right? So I go in and I spill all the beans on the biggest mistakes that we've made so far. And awesome. That is just like humbling. And, that's how we really open up our course when we start teaching people how to do this is, hey, we're speaking from experience. We're not speaking from this place where we're sitting on a pedestal and looking down on all of you. It's, I don't want you to experience the same thing that I did. And I don't think there's any reason for anybody to repeat a mistake somebody else has. If you can glean that information and avoid that misstep, you absolutely should.
So, and you're, the forthcomingness that you're willing to share that and be so transparent about some of those mistakes, and that, bringing out with other people also is just incredible, because we can all learn so much from that. And, you don't think about, success, you just see that successful person, but here you can have an opportunity to actually find out a little bit about all the mistakes and the challenges along the way, which happens to everyone. So it's very educational. It's very inspiring, because you don't think, oh, this person did it because they had, these privileges and they had this background and this, we've all come to it on our own in a certain way and struggled along the way. So I'm grateful that you put that out there and gave that, that opportunity for other people to share their stories also. So what's been your biggest matrix exit, if you will, if you can say that, in the past couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, the past couple of years, I always go back to 2010, where I fell in a pretty deep hole and was trying to claw my way back out of it. I was a new dad. I was in a job that I hated. I had more money than I knew what to do with. And it was like everything on the outside looked like it was amazing. But deep down inside, I felt empty and worthless and useless. And I had to get out of that. And that's when I stopped getting haircuts. It's an external representation of a change and a journey that I embarked on. And I questioned and challenged everything foundationally. So I grew up as a Christian. My dad was always a head deacon in the church. I didn't like singing, so I had to usher. And so, I learned a whole lot about the Bible. Every Sunday it was Sunday school, and Wednesdays was Bible study. And I just learned a ton. And it was in a place where I was asking for help and support, and I never heard the voice. I never got the guidance. I didn't see a way out. And I was asking some really tough questions at that point. And the thing that really jumped out for me is, hey, man, nobody's coming to save you. You got to do everything within your power to take control and own the situation that you're in. If you're sitting there waiting for something to happen so that your situation gets better, you're going to be there for a long time. And it made me think about something my mom told me when I was a kid. It's crazy how these like simple lessons can just shift your whole world. A car was sitting in the turning lane and it had its flashers on. And we were driving by, and I was like, why doesn't anybody help that person move the car out the road? And she said, baby, if you sit in a car with your flashers on, nobody's coming to help you. You got to get out and start pushing it. And if you get out and start pushing it, then people will show up to help you along the way. And I took that to heart, and I started working harder than I ever worked before, and started pushing that car and made some pretty dramatic changes in my life.
And you have, and anyone is to learn, a little bit more about the story behind this, because we're not going to have time to go into all of it now. But I first heard Jerome's story on Michael Blank's podcast, right, which was pretty revealing, and about how you got into leaving your corporate America job, and that didn't get into obviously the details that you're sharing now about the personal development side of things as much, but it did talk about that that step of just being frustrated with the situation you're in and making a better life, for yourself and your community. So I urge people to find, and you've been interviewing a bunch of other podcasts, but that's the one that I heard that I first, was intrigued by. So, but now you've developed, this coaching program, you have challenges that come along with that, right? Because you can't be a real coach, in my opinion, unless you've gone through things and you've experienced them. It's not like, I think I put up a post on, I don't remember if it was LinkedIn, whatever, but I put like, today's version of success, right? And it was like this: today's version of success, Google how to become successful. Okay. Then study all about how to become successful. Then teach other people how to become successful, right? Start a course how you can become a coach to teach other people how to get successful, and you're a success. So, that's kind of, tongue in cheek of what that's about, but that's not what you're about. Obviously you're about, trying to bring out real qualities, real, both spiritual and emotional, solid, people. So what's the challenges that you have in doing that and relating to other people?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is meeting people who don't believe that their dreams are supposed to be real, right? That's my thesis on life. Your dreams should be real. And when I encounter people who have been so beat up by the world, by life, and they accept that whatever it was that they hung up on the wall when they were a kid that they wanted to be or wanted to have, that they don't deserve it or they can't have it, it breaks my heart. And not only that, but when you have that messed up belief system, you don't put the work in order to manifest the actual result that you desire. And so breaking that belief system down and getting rid of all the lies and then coming back to whatever the truth is, and then getting people to use that new truth as a basis, their launch pad into that new life that they desire, is what I enjoy more than anything else in the world. You mentioned the Michael Blank podcast, and I'll speed through the story, right? I built a $20 million business for a division of a Fortune 500 company. And my reward for that was laying people off 2 years in a row. After I did it the first time, I said I was never going to do it again. The second time, I became a corporate America dropout. And, that was one of the hardest decisions in the world, right? And it mainly because you get addicted to the paycheck.
Yeah.
You're getting a lot of money, right? And you know that it's going to show up. But me telling people that they didn't have a job and they had to figure out another way to feed their family made it very clear that that paycheck might not show up for me at some point. And so I needed to build my own so that somebody couldn't tell me, hey, you got to figure it out, because I never wanted to hear those words.
Right. So that's kind of where you got into real estate investing, because building the passive income, not passive, but building the income, it's a misnomer to think that real estate investing is actually passive unless you are literally just passively investing in someone else's. But when you're an operator, when you own apartment buildings and you are running them as you do yourself, it's not passive, but the income is coming in regardless, because people are paying their rent, and you can expect that check as long as people are paying rent, obviously, which comes with its own challenges. Did you have any of those challenges, during this recent pandemic that, a lot of people got laid off, and in terms of rent collections?
Yeah, I mean, there's some operators who've been extremely fortunate. For us, we've lost about 10 or 15% of our revenue. And, that's just kind of fact of matter. Will we get all of it back? Probably not. Will we get some? Probably half. We expect to get half of it back as people make their transitions. We're working out payment plans with folks. And, for the people who are moving in new and the people who are renewing leases, we're able to increase rents as we would have normally. And so it's been a kind of a mixed bag, and you never actually know who's going to be impacted. And that kind of goes back to the whole job security conversation, right? Like when you're counting on that place of employment to deliver that paycheck, somebody can always walk in and say, hey, you don't get money from here anymore. There's an illusion there.
And so you've created that on your own, and you're trying to help other people to create that as well. So, teaching them through a course, right? You've developed a course to help other people learn how to invest and, do real estate deals, right?
Yeah, so that is what it's really about. And I mean, we go through everything from mindset all the way to a 90-day quick start plan to get you moving in multifamily. One of the things that's troubled me the most about this whole education system associated with multifamily investing is there are people who are trying to create generational wealth for their family, making a really heavy investment without having the experience necessary to be successful in it, and being left on the side of the road where the person has their money, they don't have a deal, and they're not able to actually move forward. And so what they thought was going to be a catalyst for wealth creation ends up being a catalyst for more debt. And that for me is a real challenge.
So that happens with any type of profession or any type of course that you're taking. You're always going to have a percentage of people that are not going to take the next steps to make it real. Is that what you're talking about? That there's kind of being trained, but not trained enough to actually go out and do it.
I personally believe that the success rate for the people that take the high ticket courses is significantly lower than what somebody would get in, say, college or community college.
Really?
I've heard some people report, and I don't know what it's actually based on, but less than 10% people who go through those courses actually are successful at completing a deal. And so, syndication has been all the rage for the past 7, 8, 10 years, right? People are making huge money, 2 and 3 and 4x on the money invested. And I think those days are over. But what is real is, you can buy a building and create some income from outside of your day job. And telling people, hey, you bought a single family home for $300,000. Now you should go buy a $10 million building. I think it's reckless. I don't think most people have the capacity to do that, especially if they aren't entrepreneurs. And so I encourage people to do a smaller deal. And if you look at many of the most successful educators in the space, you will see that that's where they started. They did a 10, 20 unit, then they did a 50, and they stepped their way up. They didn't just go buy a 100-unit building. And when you're partnering with people, it's really important that you have a deep relationship. And I think people think by writing that big check that they're creating a relationship. But very well, just by the way that you move in the space, that relationships aren't built on people writing checks. You actually got to relate. Absolutely. And so, we're trying to skip the step by trading money, and it doesn't work.
Absolutely. And so you're creating more than anything, you're creating a community. Because that's ultimately what is going to bring those relationships about and kind of foster the environment to create those business relationships that can take it to the next step, which is, taking action.
Yeah, I think, that's a huge part of it. I think the action piece is, hey, getting the deal. And so, I say this pretty regularly, but I'll share it here. I think every investor has 4 things that they're working through. Okay. First is knowledge. Second is deal flow. Third is experience. And the last one is capital. And so the action taking piece is in getting the knowledge and then finding a deal. And then what you should be doing in the interim is working on your relationships for capital and experience. It's unfortunately buying multifamily is like a fraternity or sorority. Somebody's got to bring you in. Somebody with the experience of that property type and size, if you're putting down on it, needs to participate in the deal in order for you to actually get that money from the bank, which is usually the biggest partner.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have other people coming in who are supporting it, but you've got to build those relationships. And if you're like me, the son of a soldier and a stay-at-home mom, we didn't have wealthy people coming over for dinner. So You got to go out and cultivate those relationships in the different places, and there's conferences and all kinds of stuff going on that you can do that. So,
and you created a conference, but unfortunately it was canceled, right, because of the whole pandemic.
so we're going to do it, assuming that the governor of North Carolina cooperates. We're going to do it the end of July, so July 31 through August 2nd. And if not, we'll either go virtual or we'll slide it back a little bit more. I really don't want to do virtual. I want to get everybody in one place. I want to get people out of the place of distraction that a lot of people are living in, so that actually focus on what they're supposed to and can actually relate. Because for me, that's important.
Sure, absolutely. And that is some of the most important things. And those really challenging, time when you have distractions, you can't really, challenge yourself to, to deal with exactly what you're trying to put together, which is create an environment for people to get over their challenges, right? And break out of that matrix, so to speak. So what's the biggest matrix that you've broken out of recently?
I think it's my belief that I can do bigger deals. We're in the tail end of a 200 plus unit deal where we're going to do it with a joint venture instead of a syndication. And it's like, you go from doing 20 units and then you go do bigger and bigger. And we're working on a development deal that's 120 units. And it's just like, if you're patient and you're consistent and you continue to do the right things and maintain a solid reputation, then people end up wanting to work with you. Yeah. People that have more resources than you could probably ever imagine having. And so that's been the game, and just getting around more people like you, right, who are true and honest and actually interested in the person and not what the person can do for them. And then from there, some really amazing things happen. So, that's really been my cage, is getting out of the cage. I kept saying, well, I can't raise money. How am I going to do the deals? I don't know a whole lot of people who are wealthy, blah, 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 blah. And the reality of the situation is I just need to keep doing what I was doing. And it would eventually result in relationships that were authentic, where you could then go and be comfortable locking yourself in a deal with them for 3, 4, 10 years, however long you want to stay in the business.
Right. So it goes back to what you were saying before, which is, you got to just get out of that car with the blinkers on and take the action, and it will come your way. When you start making the effort, we call it like, when you make that effort from within, so that effort comes back to you, from the outside. And
I think some of the most successful people I know, they always watch a person before they start working with them. They just see who they are, they watch their mannerisms, and then they form an opinion based on that. They don't paint with the big brush and say, oh, well, this person looks this way externally, so that's what they are, or that's who they are. They just watch them interact with others, and then you say, oh, okay. And then they keep watching until, they engage with them and have their own interaction.
So it's very good advice. I think a lot of people should take that to heart. So Jerome, on our episode of Weiss Advice, so our podcast, we like to ask 4 questions at the end of every episode. But on Dreamcatchers, you like to ask 3 questions as well at this. So we're going to start with that. Okay. So first question for you, from the first Dreamcatcher question, is what are you most grateful for?
Relationships. I used to be somebody who was more interested in the things, and it didn't really matter who was around as long as the things were there. One was cars, other times it was sports. And in my old age, I've learned that the people make all the difference, and the quality of the people that you're surrounded with changes the experience that you have in your life. And the lack of quality also does the same thing. And I've been able to continually elevate my circle, and it's probably more of a cylinder than a circle, right? But getting connected to some of the most amazing people, and many of those people have come through my relationship with you.
Amazing. Wow. Thank you. I'm glad, I'm grateful to be able to have provided that and make those connections. So that's amazing. That's pretty impressive. Thank you. Now the second question, I think, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but it's about what dream are you trying to make a reality? What dream are you trying to catch? Something like that, right?
Dreamer, you're most focused on catching knacks.
Okay.
And
So,
for me, the dream is blowing the portfolio up. We set a deadline of 2028 in order to acquire 1,000 doors. And I'd like to do that much, much sooner. And so aggressive on acquisition, aggressive on development, and put the portfolio together. We believe multifamily is here to stay. And we're going to do everything we can to be great operators because that's our focus. We don't just want to buy to flip out of it. We want to buy the cash flow and operate the deals. We think that's the difference maker for us. And so really looking aggressively to buy things at a fair price. We're not even looking for great deals. We want a fair price where we can turn around and make money on the deal.
sounds fair. And that sounds like a dream that can be a reality because you put in the effort and you're taking the action steps. So it's a great example. And what is the biggest takeaway that you want the listeners to come out with from this discussion today?
Your dream should be real. It's very
straight up. Okay, so we're going to move into the final four, which is, as you know, the four questions we ask all of our guests here on Wise Advice. And the first one is, what's the worst job that you ever had?
Man, my first job was my worst job. I worked for Sonic, and I lasted about 3 days.
The Hedgehog?
Huh?
You work for the Hedgehog?
No, the little drive-in restaurant.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a fast food job. So I quit the night that I had to clean out the trash can that had food in it, but there was no bag. That was the last night that I worked there.
Yeah, it wasn't for you, which is interesting. A lot of the people that we've interviewed, it's usually their first job that they consider their worst job. And I think that's really telling because everyone has to start somewhere. And usually in that first job, whatever it is, you figure out pretty quickly what you don't like about it and then move on to something that you won't put yourself back in that situation. So I think it's very telling that a lot of people have a similar interaction, obviously in many, many plethora of different roles, but the same outcome.
Yeah.
What book have you read or listened to that has given you a paradigm shift?
Yona, it's probably not okay to answer the question this way, but I got to be true. So I wrote a book called Dreams Should Be Real. And when I was writing that, it made me reflect on the most pivotal moments in my life in a way that I hadn't before, and associate the meaning to them being on the other side of it. Because hindsight's 20/20. And there were so many shifts that happened during the time that I was writing that book that it's the one that I'm really I want to use in this space because I think it will help some people go to that next space if they're looking for something to read. So
you wrote that book, and we'll put that in the show notes over there because that's something that that everyone should check out. What's a skill or talent that you would like to learn?
I'm going to be a mind reader.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting because it might, some people might think that's not a skill or talent when in fact it may very well be. So maybe be able to surprise yourself. The fourth and final question, what does success mean to you?
Significance, right? If you're not positively impacting the lives of other people, you don't deserve your breath. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. You're put on this world to be a positive impact and influence. And if you're not doing that, then you're taking up space and air that somebody else should have.
Okay. There you go. That's beautiful. I appreciate you coming out here today. This has been a lot of fun. I'm glad we can have the chance, and I'm glad we could kind of shift the roles a little bit for this session. And I hope you had a good time. I think a lot of our listeners are going to gain a tremendous amount from this discussion. I hope they will. And where can they find you? Where's the best place people can reach out to you?
Yeah, if you're interested in real estate education, myersmethods.com, MYERSMETHODS.com. If you want to talk to me specifically, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm Jerome Myers on LinkedIn, Greensboro, North Carolina. And Yona, I just want to say, man, I appreciate you creating Wise Advice, right? you're a dream catcher and you're showing everybody that their dreams can be true. And I remember when you brought it up that you were thinking about it and then you started doing it and you pushed it out. And I asked you a question, you said it's on the way. Then the artwork showed up and then I was able to go on the journey with you. And so, I really appreciate you creating this, and I think it's going to be a tremendous impact on the world.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I hope it will be. That's our goal. So thank you for being a part of the journey, and appreciate you coming down. And to all of our listeners, thank you for joining us. I really hope you got a lot out of this, and I'm sure you did, because if you didn't, I don't know what you're doing, what you're listening to until the end here. So until next time, have an awesome time. And remember, the best advice comes only when you ask.
Thank you for joining the tribe today. We would love to hear from you. Please don't forget to rate, like, and share. Perhaps someone you know could benefit from what we've discussed. Until the next time, remember that your dreams should be real.